Part 1: Hunger in the Dying Light. The twin moons of Velara IX hung low over the wasteland, their pale light glimmering across the bones of a civilization that once dared to challenge the stars. Wind swept through the cracked shells of fallen towers, whispering through metallic ruins like ghosts telling stories of regret. Among the rubble, two figures moved. Small, fragile, yet stubbornly alive. Era and Selin, sisters of the fallen Thren race. Their species had been proud once. Builders, thinkers, dreamers. Now they were scavengers. The skies that once held silver ships now carried only dust. Era, the younger one, no older than 12 in human terms, clutched an empty tin bowl. Her large lavender eyes reflected the moonlight as she searched the ground for crumbs or moldy rations, anything edible. Her stomach growled louder than the wind. "Sel," she whispered, voice trembling. I can't feel my legs." Selin turned, her thin frame wrapped in tattered cloth made from shredded polymer insulation. She knelt, brushing Era's hair gently aside. The girl's skin had lost its natural glow. The beautiful violet hue of their kind had faded to pale gray. "I know," Selin murmured softly. "I know, little star." Her tone carried both strength and sorrow. At 19, she had become mother, guardian, and protector since the orbital bombardments had erased their city and parents. For weeks, they had survived on scraps traded for scavenged metals or alien bones found near the ruins. But today, there was nothing. They had reached the Dustline, a barren stretch where even radiation eaters wouldn't go. Their filtration masks had long broken, and breathing here stung like inhaling knives. Era leaned into her sister's shoulder, whispering, "I want to sleep." Selin froze. That word sleep had become dangerous. Too many of the refugees had simply slept and never woken again. She cupped Era's cheeks, forcing her to look up. "No, not yet. Stay with me, Era. Just a little longer. I'll find us food." Era nodded weakly, though her eyes drifted shut as she shivered against the cold. Selin stood, gazing at the distant horizon. Beyond the cracked ridges, faint lights shimmered, human outposts. The new conquerors of Velara IX. They called it restoration, but to the remnants of the Thren, it was occupation. The humans were rebuilding what they destroyed, mining the planet for resources, setting up colonies. They offered food, water, and protection at a price. A price Selin swore she'd never pay. As the twin moons climbed higher, she made her decision. Leaving Era hidden beneath a collapsed shuttle hull, wrapped in thermal sheets, she whispered, "Don't move. Don't speak to anyone. I'll be back before the moons trade places." Era weakly caught her wrist. "Promise." "I promise, little star," Selin said, forcing a smile. "You'll eat tonight." Then she slipped away into the night. The closer she got to the human sector, the more alien the world felt. Giant drones hovered above the ruins, scanning for survivors or looters. White floodlights cut across the dust, revealing the gleaming surfaces of new human machinery. Cold, angular, efficient. Selin kept to the shadows, her bare feet silent on the cracked earth. The scent of cooked food, real food, hit her like a punch to the chest. Protein smoke, fried oils, bread. Her throat tightened. She hadn't tasted bread in months. Beyond the barrier of light stood Outpost Kappa, 17, guarded by soldiers in exosuits. They laughed, spoke loudly, their words strange but understandable. The humans had shared their tongue after the war, perhaps as a sign of dominance or mercy. In the center of the camp, a man in a dark uniform stood out. His hair was short, his face weathered but not cruel. A scar ran across his left temple, a mark of survival. He wore the insignia of Earth's colonial command. Selene watched him from the shadows. Commander Elias Wren. She had heard that name whispered among the survivors. Some called him the Grey Wolf, others the human who listens. He had been one of the few to halt mass executions during the occupation. But to Selene he was still the enemy, the race that burned her home. Her stomach twisted again, louder this time. A nearby soldier turned. "You hear that?" Selene froze. The soldier raised his rifle, scanning the shadows. "Something's out there." Before she could move, the floodlights flared, illuminating her small form, thin, dust-covered, eyes blazing violet against the white glare. "There!" the soldier shouted. "Thren's scavenger." She tried to run, but the ground gave way beneath her, and she stumbled forward into the light. The soldiers surrounded her instantly. One raised a shock baton, sneering. "You lost, alien." Selene stared up, trembling but unyielding. "I need food." The laughter was cruel, sharp. "You hear that? She needs food. Maybe she can work for it." They pressed closer. Selene backed away, clutching the fabric at her chest. "Please. My sister, she's starving." But the soldiers only grinned wider. Enough." The commanding voice cut through the noise. The circle parted as Commander Elias approached. His face shadowed beneath the floodlight. "What's going on?" he asked. The soldier straightened. "Sir, this one was sneaking near the supply camp. Probably a thief." Elias's gaze shifted to Selene, studying her face. She looked so young, so broken. Her hands shook, yet her eyes still carried defiance. "You came for food?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "For yourself?" "No," she said, voice barely a whisper. "For my sister." For a long moment, the only sound was the wind. Then Elias turned to his men. "Lower your weapons." The soldiers exchanged glances. "Sir." "I said lower them." Reluctantly they obeyed. Elias stepped forward, pulling a ration bar from his belt pouch and tossing it to her. "Here." Selene caught it clumsily, staring as though it were a holy relic. She could smell the nutrient oils and grains inside. Her throat tightened. She bowed slightly. "Thank you." Elias watched her carefully. "There's more where that came from," he said slowly. "If you come work at the outpost, we need locals who can navigate the ruins." She froze. The offer sounded simple, but she knew what it truly meant. Service, labor, obedience, and yet, her fingers clenched around the ration bar. "Decide quickly," Elias said, turning away. "We don't keep our gates open long." Selene looked down at the food, then toward the dark wasteland beyond the light. The night wind whispered through the ruins, carrying the faintest echo of her sister's voice. "Promise you'll come back." Her heart ached. She whispered into the night, as if to her own soul. "I'll do whatever it takes." End of Part 1. Part 2. The Price of Survival. The gate hissed open with a metallic growl, and a blinding white light poured through the gap. For the first time since the bombardment, Selene stepped willingly into a human stronghold. The air inside smelled different, not of dust and decay, but of iron, sterilizers, and heat. Her eyes darted everywhere, tall fences made of steel lattice, guards and exosuits, and drones hovering like insects. A human settlement, efficient and harsh. Commander Elias Wren walked ahead of her without looking back. "Stay close. If anyone stops you, tell them you're with me." Selene followed silently, clutching the ration bar. She hadn't eaten yet. Not until Era had food first. That promise was the only thing that kept her moving. As they crossed into the main compound, dozens of human workers paused to stare. The sight of a Thren, especially a young female, was rare. Many of her kind had been sent to refugee camps. Others simply vanished. A mechanic muttered under his breath. Another one begging or spying, said another. Selen heard every word but didn't flinch. Shame and anger had become old friends. Elias stopped before a metal container repurposed into an office. He opened the door and gestured inside. She hesitated. "Am I under arrest?" He frowned slightly. "No. But if you stand out there long enough, you might wish you were." Reluctantly, she entered. The interior was small but warm, lined with holographic maps, terminals, and ration boxes. The hum of the generators vibrated through the floor. Elias closed the door and sat behind a desk cluttered with datapads. For a moment, he said nothing, just watched her as she stood near the door like a cornered animal. Finally, he spoke. "What's your name?" "Selen," she whispered. "And your sister?" "Era, she's sick. Hungry." Elias nodded slowly. "You'll take her this." He gestured toward the ration bar still clutched in her trembling hands. "Yes." "Where is she?" Selen hesitated. The question felt like a trap. If she revealed Era's location, would they capture her too? Sell her into labor camps? Elias must have seen the fear on her face. His tone softened. "I'm not here to harm her, Selen. You came for food, not a fight. I respect that." Selen blinked. Respect? From a human commander? The concept didn't fit. He reached into a crate beside him and pulled out 2 more ration bars. Then a sealed water pouch. He placed them on the table. "These will last 2 days. But if you want more, you'll have to earn it." Her heart raced. "Earn it how?" He leaned back, studying her carefully. "You know these ruins better than any of my men. We're mapping the underground systems. The old Thren power conduits. If you help us navigate, I'll feed you and your sister. Fair trade." Selen's jaw tightened. "You destroyed those conduits." Elias met her gaze. "Not me. But yes, humans did. And now we're trying to rebuild." The words carried something strange. Guilt, maybe. Or exhaustion. Selen looked at the food again. She imagined Era's hollow eyes lighting up, her small hands breaking the ration bar in 2. The thought burned. She nodded once. "I'll do it." Elias extended a hand. "Then it's a deal." Selen stared at it, uncertain. Thren didn't shake hands. It was a human gesture of binding trust. Slowly, she placed her slender fingers into his rough, calloused palm. His warmth startled her. "Good," Elias said. "You'll start tomorrow. Tonight, take these and return to your sister. But be back by dawn." Her eyes widened. "You're letting me go." "I'm trusting you," he replied simply. "Don't make me regret it." Outside, the night was colder than before, but the food in her arms felt like fire. She ran across the wasteland, bare feet bleeding on jagged stone, lungs burning with every breath. The moons had shifted, the larger one now lower, the smaller a thin crescent. She reached the collapsed shuttle and dove beneath the hull. "Era!" she whispered. A faint rustle answered. Then a weak voice. "Sel?" Selen crawled inside and pulled her sister close, unwrapping the rations with shaking fingers. "I told you I'd come back." Era blinked at the sight of the food, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. "You found it. Eat, little star." Slowly. As Era chewed, her color seemed to return slightly, her breathing steadier. The sound of her sister eating was the sweetest music Selen had ever heard. When Era finished half the bar, Selin pressed the rest into her hands. Keep it for morning. But what about you? I'll eat later. Era frowned. You always say that. Selin smiled faintly. Because I'm not as small as you. I can wait. But she couldn't. Her stomach twisted violently, screaming for sustenance. Still she ignored it. She only watched Era until the girl drifted to sleep beside her, clutching the empty wrapper like a treasure. Selin stared through the crack in the hull at the stars. They looked dimmer than before, veiled by ash and distance. She whispered, "Whatever it takes." The next dawn came red, the sky bruised with industrial smoke from the human outposts. Selin wrapped her sister tightly. "I'll be back by night. Promise me you'll stay hidden." Era nodded weakly. "You'll bring more." "Yes. Enough for a week." She pressed her forehead to Era's and smiled. "Sleep safe, little star." Then she left again, this time walking openly toward the human camp. When she arrived, the guards looked surprised. "She came back," one muttered. Elias met her at the gate. "Good. I was starting to think you'd vanished." Selin's expression was unreadable. "I keep my promises." "Then you'll fit in here," he said. He handed her a small tablet and a translator headset. "This will help you mark the tunnels. My men will follow your lead. Don't touch anything that glows red. That's still hot plasma residue." She nodded, though she barely understood the technology. Once, her people had built reactors that could power continents. Now she was scavenging their corpses. As they entered the ruins beneath the outpost, the air grew damp and metallic. The tunnels pulsed faintly with dying energy. "This place," Elias said quietly. "Your people built it?" "Yes," Selin replied. Her voice was steady but cold. "We made light from stone. You turned it into a weapon." He didn't argue. "And now we're trying to make it right." They moved deeper. The walls glowed faintly blue, Thren bioluminal alloy, still alive despite centuries of damage. Elias stopped to run a hand along the surface, awe flickering across his features. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Selin glanced at him, almost startled by the sincerity in his tone. No human she had met spoke of Thren creations that way. For the first time she wondered, maybe he wasn't like the others. Maybe. Hours later, when they emerged back into the surface light, Elias handed her a small satchel. "Your payment. Enough for a week like you asked." Selin took it silently, clutching the food and water like sacred offerings. Then Elias said something that made her pause. "Selin, you don't have to keep hiding out there. There's a shelter in the outpost for refugees. You and your sister could stay. Safer than the wasteland." Her chest tightened. The offer was kind. But kindness from humans always had a shadow. Still, she bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Commander. I'll think about it." He smiled faintly. "That's all I ask." As she turned to leave, she didn't see the look in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, and something deeper. Because even Elias Wren knew that every act of mercy in this world came with a price. And soon Selin would learn what hers truly was. End of Part 2 to be continued. Part 3. Beneath the Earth, Truth Burns. The sun on Velara IX rose dim and blood orange, filtered through thick industrial haze. Each morning, Selin walked from the wasteland to the outpost, her bare feet tracing the same path carved by desperation. Every evening, she returned to Era with food and clean water, and every night her body trembled from exhaustion. For a week it worked. For a week they lived. But beneath that fragile rhythm, a shadow grew. Inside Outpost Kappa 17, the humans had begun expanding. They weren't just mapping ruins anymore. They were drilling deeper, tearing through ancient Thren structures like scavengers through a carcass. The tunnel she guided them through had once been conduits of life, flowing with luminal energy that powered entire cities. Now, heavy machinery roared where sacred crystals had once glowed. Commander Elias Wren watched the work silently, his face unreadable. Selen walked beside him, holding the tablet he'd given her. Its small screen flickered with tunnel maps drawn from her memories, drawn from a childhood before the war. According to your directions, this shaft connects to the central node? Elias asked, pointing to a holographic line. Selen nodded. Yes, the core of Thren. The energy heart of our world. He studied her. And what's left of it? She hesitated. Nothing that belongs to you. Elias said nothing for a moment, then sighed. We're not here to steal what's left, Selen. The colonists on the surface need power. If we can restore even a fraction of your people's technology, we can make this world live again. Her jaw tightened. You mean make it yours again? He didn't deny it. Survival doesn't belong to one race. The words lingered in the air like ash. As they moved deeper, Selen noticed the walls changing, patterns of Thren glyphs emerging from under the soot. She reached out, brushing away dust with trembling fingers. The script pulsed faintly, responding to her touch. Her people had built their structures to recognize life signatures. Each line of code was alive. She whispered the words softly. Velthra en na, Thursdary Navar. Light spilled gently from the wall, illuminating the tunnel in soft lavender hues. The soldiers behind her gasped, stepping back instinctively. Elias's eyes widened. What did you say? Selen turned toward him, her expression distant. It's a prayer. To wake the stones. The walls vibrated faintly, then fell silent. The light dimmed again. But for a brief moment the ruins had breathed. Elias exhaled slowly. You just made 300 years of dead metal come alive. It was never dead, Selen murmured. Just waiting for someone who still believed. Later that day in the command tent, Elias met with his second-in-command, Lieutenant Carr, a broad, harsh man with little patience for sentiment. Carr threw a datapad onto the table. You're letting that alien into restricted zones again. She's a security risk. She's the reason we're finding the conduits without losing men, Elias replied flatly. She's also feeding intel to other Thren stragglers, I bet. Elias's eyes hardened. If you have proof, present it. Carr sneered. Proof? Well. But you know how this goes, Commander. You give them a hand, they take the whole arm. Remember Titan Outpost. The locals turned on the engineers after weeks of peace talks. Elias leaned forward, voice calm but cold. This isn't Titan. And she's not a threat. Carr scoffed. Not yet. That night, Selen sat alone at the edge of the human camp, watching the moonlight dance on metal plating. She had finished her work and received her rations, but her mind was heavy. She could hear laughter from the barracks, humans celebrating a successful excavation. Yet below in the tunnels, she had seen something they hadn't noticed. The walls had begun bleeding light. The Thren core wasn't dead. It was reactivating. Slowly. Calling out. When she touched the walls earlier, it hadn't just responded. It had recognized her. The conduits pulsed like veins remembering blood. She whispered, Mother Core, you still remember us. Behind her, a voice interrupted the silence. You're out late. Selen turned. Elias stood there, hands behind his back, the faintest trace of fatigue softening his features. You don't sleep much, she said cautiously. He smiled faintly. Neither do you. They stood in silence for a while, the wind brushing against the floodlights. Then Elias said, "When I was your age, Earth was starving. Cities burning, oceans acidified. We looked to the stars, thinking we'd find hope. Instead we found you. And we took what wasn't ours." Selin glanced at him. "You destroyed us." "I know," he said quietly. "And I can't change that. But I can try to stop us from repeating it." Selin studied his face. The lines of guilt there weren't false. They were carved deep, too deep to fake. "Then stop the drilling," she said. He hesitated. "We can't. Too many lives depend on it now." Selin's voice hardened. "Your lives, not ours." Elias looked away. "If this core can be stabilized, both can survive." She turned sharply. "And if it can't?" He didn't answer. The next morning, Selin returned to the tunnels, alone this time. The guards trusted her enough now to let her map deeper sections. But she wasn't mapping. She was listening. She placed her hand on a wall and whispered in Thren. The stone pulsed again, a faint hum vibrating through her bones. Then she heard it, a voice. Not words but emotion. Grief, rage, hunger. The core was awake. A projection flickered in front of her. Holographic, ancient, and unstable. A female figure of light and crystal, shimmering like water. Selin fell to her knees. "Matriarch," she breathed. The hologram flickered again. Then a voice spoke, layered and resonant. "Child of Thren, why do you guide the destroyers?" Tears filled Selin's eyes. "I only wanted to feed my sister. And so you lead them to our heart. They seek what they will never understand. They will awaken death, not salvation." Selin's throat tightened. "What can I do?" "Stop them." The light pulsed violently once, then vanished. When Selin climbed back to the surface, her hands shook. Elias met her halfway, noticing her pale face. "What happened down there?" She stared at him, trying to form words. The truth burned her tongue. "You can't keep drilling," she said finally. "The core is alive. It's not a power source, it's a being." Elias frowned. "A being. A sentience. A network. It was made to sustain the planet's life, not fuel your machines." He looked skeptical but not dismissive. "We'll study it carefully." Selin's voice rose. "You can't study what you don't respect. If you disturb it, it'll see you as an infection." Elias opened his mouth to speak, but alarms blared through the camp. A soldier shouted from a watchtower. "Commander! Energy spike underground. The conduits are lighting up." Elias turned sharply to Selin. "What did you do?" "I tried to warn you," she cried. "It's waking because you've been hurting it." The ground beneath them trembled violently. Drones dropped from the air, sparks flashing across their sensors. The floodlights flickered. Carr ran up shouting, "Sir! The reactors are overloading. Thren energy is surging through the systems." Elias swore under his breath. "Shut them down. It's too late." Selin stared into the distance. The ground glowed faintly lavender, the same hue as her people's eyes. The planet's pulse had returned, but it was not gentle this time. It was angry. The core had awakened. End of Part 3, to be continued. Part 4. The Heart of a Dying World. The first tremor rolled through Outpost Kappa. 17 like the breath of a waking god. Metal screamed, alarms wailed, and the ground itself seemed to shudder with pain. Men shouted orders. Drones crashed into each other, their sensors blinded by the surging energy field that now pulsed beneath the surface. Commander Elias Wren burst from the command tent shouting, "Status report! Lieutenant Carr's voice came through the comms, crackling with static. Reactor grids fried. The Thren conduits are pumping raw power through our lines. Our systems can't handle it. A moment later the lights died. Only the glow of the lavender fissures splitting the earth gave illumination. Selen stood at the edge of the camp, her eyes reflecting the eerie light. "It's the core," she whispered. "She's trying to purge the infection." Elias turned to her, face lit by the violet shimmer. "You mean us?" Selen nodded slowly. "Your drills tore open her chamber. She thinks you're trying to kill her." Carr ran up, rifle in hand. "Then let her think that and blow the damned place sky high before it takes us with it." Elias grabbed his arm. "No. If we hit those conduits, we'll ignite half the planet's crust." Carr's jaw tightened. "Then what, sir?" "Talk to it. You want to negotiate with a planet." Before Elias could answer, the ground split open beneath the far landing pad. A column of light shot upward, twisting like liquid glass. Soldiers screamed as machinery melted in its glow. The pulse wasn't heat, it was energy in pure form, life itself turned weapon. Selen stepped forward. "She's lashing out blindly. She doesn't know you're different." Elias looked at her sharply. "You said she spoke to you." "Yes," Selen said. "She called me child. She remembers the Thren." "Then you're the only one who can reach her." Carr barked a harsh laugh. "You can't be serious." Elias ignored him. "If she can calm it down, maybe we all live." Selen's throat tightened. "If I fail, then none of us will have to worry about failure again," Elias said grimly. They descended together into the tunnels. Elias, Selen, and 2 engineers carrying portable shields. The deeper they went, the stronger the vibration grew. The walls pulsed like arteries, light flowing through them in rhythmic waves. Selen pressed a hand to the metal. "She's scared," she murmured. Elias watched her. "Scared? She feels everything. Every drill, every explosion, every death. My people built her to keep the world alive, to feel when it was in danger. And now she thinks we are that danger," Elias said quietly. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, hundreds of meters wide, filled with floating shards of crystal and molten conduits winding like roots. At the center hung a glowing sphere, suspended above the ground, beating like a heart. Every pulse sent ripples of lavender light through the ruins. Selen took a step forward. "Matriarch Kor," she whispered in her native tongue. "It's me, Selen of the Thren." The sphere flickered, its light intensifying. A distorted voice filled the air, layered and echoing. "Child of Thren, you return with the destroyers." Elias flinched at the sheer power in the sound. "What's it saying?" "She thinks I've betrayed her," Selen said, tears forming. "I didn't mean to. I was only trying to save Era." "Explain it to her," Elias urged. "Make her understand." Selen spread her arms. "Matriarch, please. The humans don't know what you are. They only want to survive, like we once did." The light flared angrily. "Survive. They devour worlds and call it life." The engineers shouted over the roar of rising energy. "Commander, readings are off the scale." Elias activated his comm. "Evacuate the surface camp. Now." Then he turned to Selen. "If she releases that power, it'll tear through the crust. Can you stop it?" Selen's mind raced. The Thren had built failsafes, spiritual conduits tied to blood and memory. Maybe, just maybe, it would still recognize her. She stepped forward until she could feel the pulse shaking her bones. Then she pressed both hands to the ground and whispered the old words of her people. "Velthra na Kor." Sonai Thren Varael. The core's glow shifted, uncertain, wavering between fury and recognition. The energy softened for an instant. Elias saw it. It's listening. But then a gunshot echoed. Carr's voice bellowed from the entrance. You're wasting time. We're ending this now. He fired a plasma charge straight into the core. The blast struck like lightning. The chamber exploded with light. Energy ripped through the walls, hurling everyone backward. Selen screamed as she hit the ground, searing pain lancing through her chest. The engineers were vaporized in a single flash. Elias staggered to his feet, vision blurred. Carr! Stand down! Carr, wild-eyed, reloaded. It's a machine, sir. Nothing more. Selen's voice cracked with rage. You fool! She feels. You've made her bleed. The core's voice thundered through the chamber, no longer sorrowful but wrathful. Pain returned, life betrayed. The walls began to collapse, molten conduits raining from the ceiling. Elias grabbed Selen, dragging her behind a fallen slab of alloy. Move! We have to get out. No, she gasped. If I leave her now, she'll destroy everything. Then tell me what to do. Elias shouted. Selen looked up, eyes glowing with the same lavender fire as the core itself. There's one way, the bonding ritual. If I link with her directly, I can calm her. What does that mean? It means I give her part of my life, part of my mind. Elias's face went pale. You could die. Selen met his gaze. Better me than millions. For a heartbeat. He saw something in her expression that tore through him. Pure, unbroken courage. He grabbed her shoulders. If you do this, I'll make sure your sister lives. You have my word. Selen smiled faintly. Then that's enough. She pulled free and stepped toward the raging heart of the core. Every pulse of light now felt like a heartbeat inside her chest. She could feel the planet's agony, the centuries of burning, the scars left by human mining, the loneliness of an abandoned consciousness. She whispered through the roar, I'm sorry. I didn't want to bring them here. I only wanted to feed her. My sister. She's just a child. The core's light flickered, softening. A child hungry. Yes, Selen breathed. She cries for food every night. Please, if you kill them, she dies too. For a long moment the tremors stopped. Then the core spoke again, its tone gentler. You still love. Then perhaps there is hope. Selen extended her hands. Let me share your pain. The sphere descended slowly, tendrils of light reaching toward her. When they touched her skin, her mind exploded with visions. Cities alive with song, oceans of silver light, the birth of her people and their fall. She screamed but didn't pull away. Elias shielded his eyes from the blinding glow. The readings on his wrist display spiked beyond comprehension. She's doing it. She's actually stabilizing it. The tremors eased. The glow faded to a steady, gentle pulse. Selen collapsed to her knees, her body glowing faintly, veins lit with soft luminal energy. Elias rushed forward, catching her before she fell. Selen! Stay with me. She smiled weakly, her voice barely a whisper. It's quiet now. She's sleeping again. Elias looked around. The chamber was calm, almost peaceful. The rage of the core had subsided. You did it, he said softly. Selen's eyes fluttered. Keep your promise. I will, he said, gripping her hand. I swear it. Then her head fell against his chest, and the lavender light in her veins dimmed to a faint shimmer. Above them, the sky cleared for the first time in years. The haze broke, and the two moons shone bright over the ruins. On the surface, Soldiers stared in silence at the light fading from the fissures, the planet settling once more into stillness. Lieutenant Carr lowered his rifle slowly. "Sir." "What now?" Elias looked toward the horizon. "Now we make things right." Far away, hidden beneath the remains of the shuttle, Era woke to the sound of silence. The tremors had stopped. She crawled out, eyes wide at the sight of the clear sky for the first time in her life. She smiled faintly. "You kept your promise, Cell." But the wind carried no answer, only the whisper of peace over a wounded world. End of Part 4, to be continued. Part 5. The Human Promise. The wind moaned across the open plain, carrying dust and sorrow. Selen stood motionless, shielding her little sister from the grit. Facing her, Commander Elias Wren removed his gloves slowly, as if unarming himself before a sacred ritual. No words, only wind. At last he said, "If I walk away, you both die. If I take you, you'll hate me. Either way, you lose." Selen's jaw tightened. "Then make the choice that saves her." Elias looked down at Era, frail, trembling, eyes glassy with fever. He muttered a curse under his breath and keyed his wrist console. "Medical drone, emergency evac. Coordinates Delta 9. The soldiers behind him stiffened. "Sir, command protocol forbids." "I know what it forbids," Elias snapped. "Do it." The patrol dispersed, scanning the ridge for threats. Era clung tighter to her sister's leg, too weak to stand. When the drone arrived, its light bathed them in white. It hummed, opening its medic bay. Selen stepped back instinctively. "No. She's not going anywhere without me." Elias nodded. "Then you both come." He took off his cloak and draped it over Era's shoulders. "That will block some radiation. Hold her close." As they boarded the crawler transport, the wasteland shrank behind them, the only home they had left. Selen didn't look back. The memory of that broken shuttle would haunt her forever. Inside the outpost. Hours later, Era lay inside a med capsule, surrounded by soft white light. Machines hummed quietly, purifying her blood, stabilizing her temperature, replacing malnutrition with nutrient infusions. Selen sat beside the capsule, her hands trembling over the glass. Elias stood across the room. "She'll recover." "Slowly," he said. "But she'll live." Selen didn't answer. Her voice had broken days ago from fear and cold. Elias continued, "You can both stay here. Work in exchange for quarters, food, medical care." Selen raised her head at last. "You mean servitude?" "No," he said, weary. "Partnership. I'm tired of turning survivors into beggars or corpses." Her eyes narrowed. "You say that like you aren't the reason we became either." He nodded once. "Not defensive, just honest. Maybe I am. But I'm trying to leave the world better than I found it." She studied him, confused by the contradiction. A human soldier who fought the war, now healing its victims. "Why?" she asked softly. Elias looked toward the window where the twin moons glowed above the storm clouds. "Because I once had a sister. She starved after my unit bombed a city for resources. The command said it was a necessary loss. I never forgave myself." Selen's heart stung. The admission sounded like a confession carved in blood. He went on quietly. "When I saw you carrying your sister across the Dustline, I thought, that's what I should have done. I couldn't save mine, but maybe I can save yours." The room fell silent except for the hum of machines. Era stirred inside the capsule, her tiny hand brushing the glass. "Cell." Selen pressed her palm to it instantly. "I'm here, little star. Rest. Days later, the outpost changed after that. Where Thren slaves once toiled, Selen now oversaw sanitation crews, earning real credits. Humans greeted her cautiously at first, then with genuine respect. Elias made sure of that. Still, distrust ran deep. Some soldiers whispered she was his pet alien. Others resented the rations he diverted to feed non-humans. Elias ignored them all. One evening, while reviewing inventory, Selen found him in the supply hangar repairing an old Terradrone. "You fix machines yourself?" she asked. Elias smirked. "If I don't, they end up broken longer. Command prefers speeches to work." She approached, hesitant. "The men they talk. They don't like me here." "They'll get over it," he said, tightening a bolt. "If they don't, I'll remind them who signs their meal logs." Her lips curved into something almost like a smile. "You risk a lot for us." He paused, meeting her gaze. "Maybe humanity needs to remember mercy before we can call ourselves civilized." For the first time, Selen believed he meant it. The attack. Peace on Velara IX was always temporary. 3 weeks after Era's recovery, a storm of plasma bolts split the night sky. A rogue faction, ex-mercenaries and smugglers, descended on Outpost Kappa 17, seeking weapons and rations. The alarm screamed. Soldiers scrambled to the barricades. Elias sprinted to the command deck. Selen grabbed Era and hid her in the maintenance tunnels. "Stay here," Selen ordered. "Don't move until I return." "But you'll get hurt," Era cried. "I have to help them," Selen said, eyes fierce. "They helped us." She snatched up a shock lance from the armory and joined the defense line. Explosions rocked the perimeter walls. She saw Elias on the ridge, directing fire, rallying panicked troops. "Get down!" he shouted as a missile struck nearby. The blast hurled them both into the mud. When the ringing in her ears faded, Selen saw him bleeding from a shard lodged in his shoulder. "Commander!" she cried. He gritted his teeth. "Not lethal. Cover the west flank." Without hesitation, she ran toward the breach, her alien reflexes sharper than any human's. She slammed her lance into the raiders, electricity cracking through the air. Soldiers stared in disbelief as the alien worker fought like a storm incarnate. By dawn, the attackers fled, leaving the outpost scarred but standing. After the battle, Elias sat on a medbed, his shoulder bandaged. Selen entered, grime-covered and limping. "You disobeyed orders," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "You said you didn't want me to die. You never said I couldn't fight." He chuckled despite the pain. "Fair point." Then his tone grew serious. "You saved lives today, Selen. My soldiers saw it. They'll never look at your kind the same again." Selen lowered her head. "I didn't do it for them." "I know," he said. "That's why it matters." She met his gaze. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a bridge built from blood, dust and shared defiance. Prologue, years later. Velara IX healed slowly. The ash storms thinned. The first green sprigs of engineered moss clung to the soil. Outpost Kappa 17 became more than a military base. It became a colony, where humans and Thren rebuilt side by side. Era, now grown, tended the gardens that purified the air. Her laughter echoed through the halls once haunted by hunger. And Selen. She stood atop the reconstructed ridge, looking out at the horizon where the moons rose in tandem, symbols of balance. Elias walked up beside her, older now, the scar on his face silver in the light. He carried 2 cups of steaming synth tea. "Still watching the sky?" he asked. "Always," she replied. It reminds me what we lost. And what we gained. He handed her a cup. You ever think about leaving this rock? Plenty of colonies would take you. She smiled faintly. And miss seeing humans learn how to share. Not a chance. They stood there in silence, the wind no longer cruel but gentle. Era's voice called from below. Cell. Commander. Dinner's ready. Elias glanced at her with a rare grin. You trained her well. Selin shook her head. No. You gave her a world worth training for. He looked toward the horizon. Maybe humanity didn't win that war after all. Maybe we just earned a second chance. Selin turned toward him, her violet eyes reflecting the moon's. Then don't waste it. They clinked cups quietly as the first stars appeared, shining over a world that refused to die. Then,